Rachel Baxter.
Thanks so much, Rachel Baxter from Channel 9. So the aged care reform has obviously been the grand centrepiece of last week's budget reply, but Mark Dreyfus has admitted that there may not be enough trained nurses to implement the plan and have a registered nurse on duty 24/7 in every aged care facility. You're the Treasurer. Have you calculated how many nurses will be needed, how much this will cost, and how long it will take?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, we do need more nurses. And one of the reasons why we've got a big substantial training policy and a big substantial universities policy is because where there are areas of substantial skills shortages, we need to deal with that. And that's one reason why one of our biggest emphases, our biggest commitments has been around skills training. So I think that's self-evident. We will need to train more people. Our policy does not come in the day after the election. There's a little bit of time to ramp up to it. But our intention is to train more nurses and to fill this gap.
How many more though, sorry? And you said in your speech as well that the plan is fully costed. How much will it cost for these nurses?
Well, our plan is $2.5 billion. We've costed that. We've put the policy out there and the costing out there. We'll need tens of thousands of nurses. I mean, that's pretty clear. When you want to put more nurses into aged care, you need to train them for that task, and that's what we intend to do.
Sarah Martin.
Hello, Sarah Martin from The Guardian. Just back to questions that both Laura and Phil have tried to ask you about in terms of fiscal consolidation. You've been very critical of the budget for being chock full of wasteful spending. Can you identify spending over the forward estimates or over the medium term that you won't go ahead with, and what sort of saving that would give to the budget? And you've obviously been very critical of discretionary grant spending. Why not abolish those discretionary grants altogether?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'll take them in reverse order. Your last question. We think that there is an opportunity to trim some of the discretionary funds, but it's difficult from opposition without full visibility. One of the reasons we have estimates and other opportunities is because there's not a lot of visibility on what the government has committed to those funds or where some of that money is going to. So that is a process that we intend to engage in. On the other issue about an example of spending that the government does that we wouldn't do, I think there's a really clear example. You know, the government, because they had for so long this arbitrary staffing cap on the public service, meant that so many billions of dollars were being spent on labour hire and contractors and consultants in areas traditionally performed by the APS. And, you know, I spent a lot of time with the accounting firms and the consulting firms, and they do first-class work, and nobody's saying that we end that. But there is an opportunity, I think, to have a good look at the spending that goes into that part of the budget, to work out whether we could do more with less, you know, more in terms of capacity, less in terms of spending on contractors and consultants. And I would expect, and this is something that we will detail when we can, but I would expect that that would come up with a saving in the low billions of dollars.
Andrew Probyn.
Chalmers, Andrew Probyn from the ABC. One of the side benefits of the pandemic, if you want to call it that, is that we've managed to get unemployment into the threes, or we will get it into the threes. Now, obviously, one of the reasons there is that the borders are being closed. What will be your approach to unemployment, given that wages is one of your high priorities, and that having a low unemployment is meant to spark wage increase when you have got pressures in, say, aged care that's going to need, as you've just said, tens of thousands of workers? Are you a big Australia man, or are you something else?
Well, I think, and Christina will tell you this too, you know, there's an opportunity as the migration settings return to something that looks a bit more like normal, to work out what the best version of that is, what the best mix of that is, temporary, permanent, skilled, unskilled, all of the other types of migration. And so I've always been a supporter of a decent-sized migration program. Overall, it is good for the economy, but what that requires is that you get the constituent parts of it right, and that you build public support for it. And so migration is a big part of the story. On unemployment more broadly, we want the unemployment rate to be as low as possible. And I said in my speech, it's falling in welcome ways, but it's not bringing with it that wages growth that you identify in your question. It's bringing skills shortages, but it's not bringing wages growth that keeps up with the cost of living, so real wages are falling. And so the difference between our approach to unemployment and the government's, and you'd expect to see this looked at in the white paper if we get the chance to do it, is the labour market is a broader story than just the unemployment rate. Now, the labour market is about underemployment. It's about concentrated unemployment in communities like the one that I represent, unfortunately. You know, it's about wages. It's about job security. And so we take a much broader look at the labour market. We don't declare victory just because there's a forecast of an unemployment rate. We would declare victory if wages are growing again sustainably in ways that make sure that people can keep up. If we're dealing with job insecurity, if we're dealing with all of these other issues that have been issues in the labour market for so long.
Jade Gelberger.